You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
PackersTalk.com. Do you want to experience the thrill of a Packers game at Lambeau Field? If so, be sure to get your game tickets from the longtime trusted source in Wisconsin, Ticket King. Visit their locations in Milwaukee and Green Bay, or just go to their website, theticketking.com. Again, that's theticketking.com.
Packers Therapy.
It's Packers Therapy. It's Chris and Dave. Coming off a Packers loss just a few hours ago at Lambeau Field, the Packers go down 31-26 to the, I was going to say Baltimore Colts. I guess they've not been the Baltimore Colts for quite some time.
Yeah.
Indianapolis Colts, Packers losing at Lambeau. They fall to 4-4 halfway through the 2016 season. Dave, how much trouble do you think the Packers are in right now in terms of making the postseason?
Good question, because that's two factors to that, is how good are the rest of the teams and how good are they? Because they may make the playoffs at 8-8 if Minnesota and Detroit and Chicago all kind of beat up on each other and ends up being a really close division. You could win at a 9-7. But do I care if they make the playoffs when they play this bad is a completely different question, because I thought you were going to say how much trouble are they in, and I would have said deep trouble. Will they make the playoffs? It's still possible. I suppose they're only a game back, and they still play Minnesota. We're making Detroit part of the conversation again, which is too bad. But all that seems irrelevant to me. I don't know if I want to see this team sneak into the playoffs and get pounded by some team that's playing a lot better, because I can't stand to watch this team underperform consistently week after week. So what do you think? Do you think they make the playoffs?
I don't think so. And this is why. Well, for one thing, they're in third place now in the division. Vikings lost again. I think that's their third in a row. They're at 5-3, and they are a game behind the Vikings. But the Lions are 5-4, a half a game ahead of the Packers. And they got the Lions still, and they got the Vikings still on the schedule. Both of those teams are good. Lions better than we expected. Vikings, I'm not sure. They seem to be better than we thought, but now I'm not quite so sure. But coming up, Packers have the Redskins. They got to play at the Eagles. They got the Seahawks still on the schedule. 3 road games in a row upcoming. To get the 10 wins, which is usually a good chance of making the postseason, got to go 6-2. Based on what we've seen this season, and not just today. I mean, we're recording this on a Sunday night. The game's only been over for about 3 hours. So it's not just a reaction to this game. If you look at the whole season in totality, I don't feel anything, Dave, that gives me the sense as though they're going to go 6-2. 9-7, perhaps, but I'm not even sure with that. I mean, this team is really, in some ways, I think, snake bitten. When one unit seems to come around, the other doesn't. Today, again, missing Clay Matthews, Sam Shields. Who knows what his future is going to be? And it's so hard to figure out what this team is about at the halfway point. I don't feel very comfortable about them making the postseason, period.
I don't either. Last week we talked about a loss, and we felt good about it, even though they lost, because it seemed like they were trying, or they were figuring things out a little bit on offense. Today, I really felt near the end of the game that I started to think to myself, and I heard some of the talk radio at the end, and maybe they've been doing this after every loss for the last few weeks and maybe last year, is I'm really starting to think that maybe the Packers need to think about moving on as far as the system, the coaches, because it really is discouraging to see them not figuring out the offense. I thought last couple weeks it was starting to change, but I don't know what they were doing today. I don't know if it was just the game plan they had just didn't work, or got surprised by something, or guys didn't execute, or whatever it might be. But Indianapolis came in really weak at two places. They had their offensive line, I think, they were down to, I thought I heard, the eighth or ninth guy, kind of like our secondary, but worse on their offensive line. And their pass defense was not very good, and we couldn't figure out a way to attack either of those. And I don't know, maybe it's just our talent is not nearly that good. It's just that we've had Aaron Rodgers. When he plays well, he masks over a lot of faults, or if they just aren't able to scheme up and beat teams they should beat. I think this is a team that, at home with lots of problems. I mean, we have injuries too, but I didn't think we lost because of injuries. It wasn't the fact that they just I mean, our secondary didn't play great and they gave up big plays at the end, but it wasn't like they were killing us, I think, in the secondary. I mean, we had guys who are starters that couldn't generate any kind of pass rush, even without Clay Matthews. He would have been in there, that would have been better, but there were guys there that should have generated a pass rush. And our offense is more or less the offense that we're going to be with, except for our running back, but they've had a few weeks to figure that out. So I feel like this group that could not figure out how to win this game, or at least keep it close, because I didn't think this was really a close game, Chris. We came back at the end when they went to prevent defense, which we see teams happen all the time. You wonder, why do they do it? And if they'd have gone 3 handoffs at the end of the game and punted again, we might have won that game. But here's a coach that kind of figured out that maybe I shouldn't just go into prevent and conservative on offense like our coaches do. But I don't know where I was going with that whole rant. I just got a bunch of things all at once. But to me, this game made me really seriously think about whether the Ted Thompson McCarthy should be questioned. And I know I'm not alone on that. More heavy reaction fans like me will say that. Fans like you, I think, will point to the fact they won a Super Bowl 6 years ago. But I'm starting to really think if their act is getting a little bit old.
Well, I don't think it's just the Super Bowl 6 years ago. I mean, they've made the postseason, the last 7 seasons consecutively, something like that. I mean, it's not like this is a team that has routinely struggled and underachieved. I don't think that's accurate at all. But I think today there was multiple failures, and I think it started right off the bat. I mean, you open up with a kickoff return.
Yeah.
It reminded me a little bit of a couple of years ago in college football. Ohio State comes into Camp Randall to play the Wisconsin Badgers, and Wisconsin opens the game with a 100-yard return for a touchdown. And I think Ohio State came in ranked number 1 in the country, I believe, 1 or 2, and Wisconsin went on to pull an amazing upset. And I got the same feeling today that, when a team comes in as a significant underdog and they get a jolt like that right out of the gate, it's essentially you're spotting them 7 points.
Yeah.
You have a lot of time to catch up, obviously, but once you saw the limitations on defense, and I'm gonna disagree with you completely, Dave. I think the loss of Clay Matthews again was a huge factor. I thought it was a huge factor last week.
I think so too. But
to discount that though is saying, well, they have other guys that can rush the passer. Yeah, I think you can't just take your best pass rusher off the field and think, yeah, you should compensate for that, especially when you don't have your top 2 corners. Your third corner is in his first game back. I mean, there's a lot of deficiencies there to make up. And this isn't, Indianapolis has got some problems, but they do have a good quarterback, and they do have at least one really good wide receiver. So it wasn't as though they didn't have any weapons, and you spotted them, not only the 7 points off the bat, then they had a 61-yard return that set up a field goal. And then your special teams misses a 48-yard field goal, and then they turn around and they drive it 62 yards for a touchdown.
Yeah.
So you have 3 special teams failures right there. I don't know where this has cropped up in the last couple of weeks. Special teams have been, okay for the past year or so, and all of a sudden now, they're a glaring weakness, and I think it was a major contributing factor. Forget about, game planning, and forget about the fact that the defense was unable to stop the Colts. The special teams put them in such a big hole that was tough to dig out of.
Yeah, well, you have a point there, because I have seen teams when it's a special teams error early. Remember when Denver was playing Seattle and in the Super Bowl, and Denver had the I guess it was at the punt, the hike punt that went over the punter's head. It was a
Yep.
quick touchdown for Seattle, right? And then Seattle just kind of rolled that whole game. Maybe there's something to that initial gut punch that sets you on your heels, and all of a sudden you're kind of reeling. You don't really recover from it till it's too late. Because you're right, an early score like that or just a gimme, it can be really demoralizing. And did you hear Aaron Rodgers' interview?
No, I did not.
He kind of pointed out the fact that guys came out really flat. And usually that's something we see or say, and we
Yeah.
have no idea, right? I mean,
Exactly,
we're
right.
watching on
Yep.
TV, but
Yep.
we can tell they're not playing well, and we think it's because they're flat. He's hinted at sort of the fact that they seem kind of flat. They weren't nearly as charged up as they should have been. And I wonder if that's what happens. You're just getting your helmet, up and ready to go, and you realize, oh my gosh, you just ran for, we're down 7-0. But my theory on the special teams of why it might be declining, that one is, I think, partially due to injuries. If you think about it, I was looking at who's on special teams. I mean, some of these guys never made the team or wouldn't be on special teams. These aren't your starting special team guys that you came out of camp with. I think you've got, you're starting to put Gunter is your starting corner, your second corner. Maybe he used to play special teams, now he's not. So I think when you have a lot of injuries, you just forget the fact, I think, that your special teams also is affected by that, and you've got some guys that probably aren't usually playing there or guys that wouldn't normally be on the team, and that could be part of the problem.
I think that's a really good observation. I really hadn't considered that. But, when you have so many guys who are either injured to the point where they can't play or they're playing at less than full capacity, yeah, I mean, there's going to have a ripple effect not only from scrimmage, but in the special teams. I think that makes perfect sense. It doesn't explain why Mason Crosby, who has been nails for, it seems like, forever, now is having, some difficulties. Now, 48-yard field goal, that's not a chippy, but this is, we've become kind of spoiled with this guy. He's been very dependable. And his connection, Dayton Jones, is still on the team, right? So he should have been plenty high for this game. And yet he wasn't able to convert the field goal. And that's, it takes points off the board. In a game where you get a couple of interceptions, you would think that this is, going to be a game where you're setting up your offense to score and you stop them on the drive by being able to intercept the ball. And yet you don't, because you give it back on special teams. That's, that is a knee in the groin for sure.
Yeah.
And other things too. I mean, Jeff Janis, for God's sakes,
Yeah. Well, I knew it.
The ball literally hit him in the face. It was a perfect pass. It fell right into him, and the guy couldn't hang in it. Those are the kinds of things when you're trying to overcome that special teams gap, and they had a couple of them today. You want to overcome that. That's the kind of play you have to make. And that was freaking brutal.
Yeah. That I thought, of all the things that went wrong, I thought, people may come back to that and use that as a bigger problem than all the other things, because that was a mistake you can see, like, literally in your face, in his face.
Literally, yeah. Exactly. He hit him right in the grill. Yeah.
Right there. And, I guess as that happens, you go, well, I'm sure we all thought maybe that's why they don't play him more. But he was open. But, the guy just seems to be snake bitten. Yeah, but it is a big deal, because I'm telling you, I never saw Jordy Nelson hardly ever open. I guess he was open to play right before that, right?
That's right. He was wide open, and Rodgers missed him. And
right. He was open.
As far as Jordy goes, though, hey, you got to lay off on. He had 7 catches. He led the team today in receptions, and that touchdown catch
was great.
I have no idea. Well, I don't know why Rodgers threw it, because it should have been picked. But somehow, he went country strong on him and got that ball away. Jordy played well today. A hell of a lot better than Jeff Janis, for God's sake. I mean, and then on the 25-yard reception that Janis has, the way the guy holds the ball, too, he's holding it out away from his body.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I can see why they don't have a lot of confidence in that guy.
Well, they shouldn't be on the team. If you can't, you got a guy who's flirting.
He's a special teamer. He's a special teamer.
Yeah, all right, fair. I guess that's fine. But yeah, that's the problem with the Packers right now. They got a guy that's not fast that can catch. They have a guy that's fast that can't catch. They don't have a guy that can do both. That can tilt the field at all. But I thought, I don't give Janis any cover for dropping that ball. I mean, I get, but I think he's a guy, and along with some of these other guys, I don't think you can just throw it to Nelson time after time. I mean, how many attempts did they throw to Nelson? I mean, he was 13 targets for Jordy, and he is rarely open in man-to-man coverage. He just doesn't get open anymore. And a couple of throws when it's third down and he's chucking it down the field, we talk about that. That happens all the time that drive us crazy. I thought, he's not only are those low percentage completions on third down, but he's not the same guy that he was 2 years ago. So I don't know what's wrong with this team, because it's not just offense. Defense certainly. I guess defense you can point to injuries. You maybe should give a little bit of a break for that. I mean, they did have some key stops at times. They had 2 interceptions, which is good. They
stopped the run today on defense, so I will give them that. What their problem was is they didn't have much of an answer in the passing game. But having said that, Luck's passer rating was only 74.
Yeah.
I mean, Rodgers was almost 95. He was 94.8. And you look at the total yardage, the defense gave up, 360 yards? Not great, but the Packers had over 400 yards. I mean, they outstatted them in lots of ways, but Luck made the plays when he had to, especially down the stretch.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's the problem with the defense. They gave up certainly plays, and you're going to do that, but they can't make a stop at the end. They don't have someone who ever steps up and makes a big play at the end of a game. I can't remember, outside of Clay Matthews and then maybe Reggie White, like at an end of a game when you need a big play of someone making that play. I just have selective memory, but they just don't seem to have that kind of guy on the team. So, but I don't think it's defense, but yeah, now special teams is falling apart. Do you play any of this at the feet of the coach at all? Because I mean, do you feel like they're underperforming? I guess that's a question to start with. Because if that's true, if they're not prepared, or if they're ill prepared, the game plan. Because let me step back for when I was watching the game, I thought for some reason they were going a lot to the tight end, and I don't know if that was just if that was a game plan thing or that's just who was open. They hadn't thrown to Richard Rodgers, I think 0 times last week, and now they throw to him 10 times and for 6. And Richard Rodgers is fine; he can catch a first down ball, but when they throw like a 1-yard pass to him, he's going to get you 1 or 2 yards, right? I mean, he's going to be tackled almost immediately. He has no moves whatsoever. I mean, he should be a safety valve. He's the guy you throw to move the chains. And then I thought, what was the other? They tried to run the ball some early too, and I thought there was one early where they ran twice, and then they threw incomplete, and they were 3 and out. I think that's when they missed the field goal after the first interception. I thought they were trying to establish the run, and I thought, I don't know why they're messing around with trying to establish the run when they have no one back there. So I just feel like somehow they are not either Luck is not on their side. They are choosing to go
Luck was on the other side. Luck was on the Colts.
That's true.
You had that confused.
Well, there's the problem. Luck
was definitely not on their side.
Yeah. And here they probably thought Luck was going to be on their side.
That's what the problem is.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well,
okay, should we just wrap it up now?
We should wrap it up. Yeah.
Right. Probably glad. Okay. Now, in terms of rushing, it's tough to fault them in the rushing department. They only ran to running backs 13 times. And Montgomery, his 7 carries, 53 yards, 7.6 average. I mean, you can't fault that too much. They passed it 43 times. In fact, the number of drops backs was actually 46 because they had 3 sacks in there. So they, we called last week, we wanted a pass-heavy offense, and that's certainly what we had. So your question was, preparation. I don't have a problem particularly with how they approach this game. What I have a problem with is the execution at critical times. And it's on both sides of the ball. I can cut the defense a little bit of slack because they're without a couple of probably their 2 most important players in Shields and Matthews. And let's face it, I mean, 56 out there, I think he's probably given it what he has. I don't think Peppers has all that much in the tank. I think he's a better player, when you're playing him 25 or 30 snaps and not as much as they are right now. And I also can see that, 53, Nick Perry, even though he was having a great season, he is not the man. I think
Invisible.
he's a lot better when 52's on the field.
Yeah.
And that those things have an effect. Now the run defense is still solid. There's no doubt about that. Teams have to get one-dimensional. Unfortunately, they're not very good against that one dimension. And again, now this I can't assess. Is it scheme that they're playing? I mean, based on what I saw today, they were trying a lot of creative things. I mean, they were rolling zone coverages. I think that's how they got those couple of interceptions. They were doing things that were, I thought a little out of the box and inventive. However, there were just far too many times where there was a hole in the zone, or somehow someone was able to slip open and get those 8 yards on a 3rd and 7. I really am at a loss to figure out, why those things are happening. You think when you hold the other teams, if I just showed you these stats, the Colts ran for a 3-yard average, and their quarterback had a 74 passer rating, and the Packers had more total yards than they did and more first downs, you'd probably say, oh, the Packers probably won that by a touchdown or 10 points.
And had 2 interceptions.
Well, and that fits into that 74 passer rating. But you look at it, and that's not at all. And I think you mentioned this earlier. It didn't really feel as though the Packers had any semblance of control of the game. I mean, it felt like, pretty much from the opening kickoff that the Colts were in charge of the game, even though the Packers possessed the ball. I haven't seen the time of possessions, but I'm going to guess that the Packers had a lot more time of possession. Everything seemed to be set up. Well, no, I take that back. They did not. It was pretty much even. They both had about 30 minutes. In fact, the Colts had 30:03. The Packers had 29:57. But you look at the stats, and it was in the favor of the Packers. Now, how can that be? Well, special teams is a part. It wasn't turnovers. That wasn't the factor in the game. It comes down to things like not being able to put more pressure on Luck to further get that passer rating down. It seemed like when he needed to have time, it was late in the game. It was Clinton Dix, I think, who blitzed in on the right side of the defense, the left side of the offense. He came in, he had a clean shot, and Andrew Luck is a hoss of a man, right? He's a big dude, and he wasn't able to bring him down.
Did a Mike Neal right over the side of him? Yeah,
precisely. Yeah, that's what I thought. Man, that's familiar. Oh, Mike Neal, of course. So, but those kind of things kill you. I mean, it's not just the Jeff Janis drop. I mean, there was plays like that, plays that you almost have the guy and you don't, or you let him get that extra yard when you can't really quite shut it down. Those kind of things. Frank Gore. What is he, like 58 years old? He's been playing forever. But he only averaged 3.2 yards, but it seemed like he got those 3.2 yards when they needed him to get it.
Yeah, on 3rd and 2. Yeah, almost every time.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's really it's hard to point to one thing. It's a series of multiple small things that just aren't lined up for the Packers. And you're at home. The weather in Wisconsin is tremendous. I mean, it was in the upper 60s today. And so I know over in Green Bay, it was probably the same deal. So the weather isn't a factor. And the stuff they're saying about the field, that field's always been slippery. I don't think.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because
it was slippery for both teams, too.
Yeah, that's true. But I thought, I wonder if we'll read this week that there was a mistake that was made on that field. Because I remember as I was watching, like, everyone seems to be falling down. And I thought, I don't know if it rained or what was the problem. And the explanation.
Yeah, you heard the explanation?
Yeah, that they're afraid of the dew, so they sprayed the field with something.
Yeah.
And then by the time, but look, I know how it goes in Wisconsin. If you have dew in the morning and the sun's out all day, it's not still wet at 3:30.
It's dry. It is.
Yeah. So they did something wrong there, right?
Well, I personally think, okay, now I am not a turf expert. Okay, I want to be very clear on this point. I know they use DT Grassmaster, and what I understand is they have synthetic fibers that are woven in with the regular grass. Okay, so it's a grass field, but it's more durable because of the synthetics that are woven into the mixture. All right, I don't know this. I know they've had trouble in Pittsburgh with DD Grassmaster. I think Lambeau has been better than that. But anytime you're mixing in a synthetic, I think you might just wind up having some of these kind of slippery problems because synthetics, by definition, are petroleum products. And, when they get wet, they're going to be a little more slippery. I mean, that's just the nature of that. Now, that's my opinion as a layman with a limited understanding of this. But I wasn't buying, it was due and they put something on it. And this field's been slippery forever. It's not anything new.
I suppose. But yeah, it was just kind of a side comment. I wondered if maybe they would have watered the field down a bit because they wanted to slow Indianapolis down with their receivers. But I thought, nah, I don't. Because our receivers certainly aren't fast. Why don't we make nobody fast?
I don't think they do that. Because when we've been at the games, it's not like in baseball where they come out, before the game when they wet the infield down.
Yeah.
I don't recall ever seeing that at Lambeau because guys are out there, practicing and stuff. They don't really have a chance to do it. If they would do it, it would be, hour and a half before the game, and it would be largely, dried up by the time the game would go on anyway. So yeah. I just think it was a case where both teams were playing on the same surface, and the Packers didn't have game, and the Colts did when they needed to. But Colts felt when the Packers fell behind by 14. I just did not get a sense as though, and there's plenty of time to play, I just didn't get a sense as though the Packers were going to win that game because they didn't seem able to stop the Colts when they had to. And even in the third quarter, they were still having trouble getting out of their own way on offense.
Yeah. Going back to the offense, you said, if I showed you the stats, but the last two drives, the Packers drove 75 yards and 80 yards. And I would say, all of a sudden they miraculously start to play really well on offense and score 2 touchdowns. That was with how much time left in the game? The Packers got their first. There's 9.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter.
Right.
So at that point, I guess Indianapolis, this isn't totally accurate, but Indianapolis had 360 total yards, just looking at it real quick. The Packers had 416, so they won on total yards, but 155 of that came at the last two drives. So they had 261, so they had a good 100 yards less than Indy up to that point. And that's when Indianapolis went into a prevent defense. And so,
but Indy didn't have 360 then, though, Dave, because they got a lot of their yards in the last drive or two that they had too.
Actually, no.
Yeah.
Well, 50
they
got
moved
50,
down the field.
Yeah,
they got
yards.
At least 50. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they had 9. They went 3 and out.
So
they had 9.
They had 300 yards. The Packers had 250.
Yeah. They both offenses played terrible, I guess you could say. Indianapolis had 300 and the Packers had 261. And so neither team played very well on offense. Our 2 interceptions should have nullified a kickoff return. It
you
didn't.
Would think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there were 2 kickoff returns though. That second one set up a field goal, so that's 10 points.
Yeah, and our 2 interceptions only gave you 1 field goal. So
right.
So they basically spotted them then a touchdown, and that sort of stuck. That
was the difference in the game.
And I guess that was the difference in the game. That's right. I look at, as this game, in the heart of the game, the second and third quarter, our offense just could not generate anything. It seems so painful to watch this offense move the ball down the field. They are committing to the pass, which I think is what they have to do. They got to rely on what they have, and running Montgomery or Don Jackson as a change of pace is fine. But man, they drop back, and I mean, every throw I feel is going to be contested or the guy's not open. Remember, it used to feel like every time he threw, or when he scrambled and he threw it, you felt like someone must be wide open. Now it just feels like you just kind of cross your fingers, hopes that it's a good play. On the interception that he threw, I thought that ball was behind Adams, and he was kind of. It would have been a meaningfully bad throw, I think, if he had intercepted it. So
I don't think Adams would have caught that ball.
No.
I think that ball was. He probably would have got his hands on it, but I don't think he would have caught it.
Yeah, this team is broken. I think as the offense goes, the team goes, and this team has been built to be a great defensive team. They've tried their best, but we've got our best defensive player is always hurt. Something is wrong with our offense. That I think you're right. It's probably always, we go back to weeks ago where we talked about, It's a number of things that is causing this offense. Rodgers is a piece of that, and I don't know who steps up to lead this team out of this funk. You know, last year, they beat Detroit on that Hail Mary. You'd think, all right, that's a good turning point in the season, and it didn't. I just something seems to be broke with this team, and that's where I'm starting to kind of come to the conclusion that this team might need a pretty big shakeup. Maybe you get a draft that you get a special player that really wakes up this team and brings a new dimension. Maybe that can happen, but I have no confidence in this team right now against anybody going forward.
Well, I think that this is, and I know it's only the halfway point, and things can happen. But looking, at the schedule ahead, I don't think this is going to be a playoff team. And the reason I think that's significant, besides the fact that you can't win the Super Bowl if you don't make the playoffs, I think it's significant because that is usually the kind of thing that spurs
change.
Action.
Yeah.
Right. And I think at this point, it won't be the end of Mike McCarthy unless it's the end of Ted Thompson. But assuming that Ted's not set to retire yet, I mean, what's the guy going to do if he doesn't have football? So if Ted stays in place, Mike probably stays in place. He probably survives one season without making the postseason. But then I think people are right at that point. If it works out, they don't make the postseason, then he probably is on, quote, the hot seat or, some kind of scrutiny. You maybe get a pass once, but I don't think you probably get a pass twice. But I also don't think it would be just McCarthy. I think that would bring the whole works down.
Yeah.
And then a new GM would bring in his own coach, and then there would be all kinds of shakeups. But I don't think missing one postseason is going to do it. It would get them, I think, to take a different look at what they're doing and try to shake things up from where they are. But I don't think it brings the works down the way it would if they missed it twice in a row, with Aaron Rodgers still at a point in his career where he is not an old man, even though he keeps grabbing that left ankle or foot or whatever it is. I don't think he's physically old. He still has arm strength. He can still move. I mean, he ran 60 yards last week, 43 yards this week. I don't think that's the problem. There's something else that is going on at this point, and I'm afraid it's going to cost him probably a postseason appearance.
Yeah, I think so too. This just whatever ailed him last year seems to have carried over. I'd be really interesting to know what's going on at 1265 Lambeau Field right now. It's 1265, right? I figured
it's Lombardi Avenue, 1265 Lombardi Avenue.
There's probably conversations with Mark Murphy, the president, right now. And is it him with his confidants, whoever they might be? Is it him and Ted Thompson is in the room and they're sort of talking? Or is it him, Ted Thompson, and McCarthy? Wouldn't be right this second, but I guess they're in Green Bay, so maybe it could be this second. Are they all in the room trying to figure out what the problem is? Because they're on the same page, is basically what I'm saying. Is it possible that Mark Murphy is with his group?
No. If Mark Murphy's having a meeting, Dave, he's having a meeting about what new stores or developments are going to go into Lambeau World, or what they're building there, the Xanadu that they're building in the Stadium District. I think that's what Murphy cares about, and Ted's probably doing his Bible study. I mean, it's 10 o'clock on a Sunday night, the game is over, and Ted has the sleep of angels, but probably because he has a devotional and a hot glass of milk, and then he cleans up the assassin's rifle and goes to bed.
Well, you know what I mean. Like, what's the problem with this team? Like, is it the players and execution? So everyone, all the coaches, everyone's getting together. Like, how do we work through this problem? Or is the upper management thinking like these coaches? We something's wrong with these coaches, or at the very high level, are they saying we need to clean house? So, something is definitely wrong with this team, and it could be that everyone involved feels like if we just had less injuries, we'd be fine, or if if these guys would execute the plan better, it would be fine. I mean, McCarthy at halftime, his halftime speech was, guys need to get open against man-to-man. So he certainly thinks these guys, it's an execution problem, or at least that's what he says on his interview. But I wonder where the real problem lies. And, like, we're all in organizations where if there's a problem, like, there's an inside circle that knows really what the real problem is, and you might not be able to fix it because of politics or whatever else. But you kind of know what the problem is. We don't know, and I think it's more than just Jeff Janis dropped it, or they had a real good play on defense against us. I think it's something more than that. The problem is we'll just never really know until people write books or talk about it years later.
Well, let me ask you this. Okay, I'm going to flash back to 2007 and the NFC Championship game. And I think it might have been McGinn's article following that game when he raised the notion of, were they going to part ways with Brett Favre? And I thought, what? That just didn't make any sense to me at all, because the guy had a really good season, and the team had overachieved. They were 13-3. They were in overtime, for the chance to go to the Super Bowl. But yet there were discussions going on about Brett Favre at that time, apparently for a while, and it came out later on that they were thinking about making a change at halftime of the NFC Championship game. You don't think that way unless you've been thinking that way for a while.
Right.
So it's hard to know if people have been thinking about that kind of thing inside of 1265 or not. I mean, Ted has this what me worry kind of thing, going on. That is his public persona. He doesn't seem like he's the kind of guy that worries too much about that sort of thing. But McCarthy seems to be that kind of guy. And yeah, because if he was thinking about, benching the old gunslinger, he's probably thinking about other stuff too. I don't know what prevents that from happening. Maybe it's because he and Rodgers are so closely tied that making some kind of limiting what Rodgers can do and that kind of stuff would have repercussions that he doesn't want to face at this point. Not sure what it is, but there's something wrong. Even when you're limited, you're still playing at home. You still have most of your weapons on offense. Even if you don't have your running backs aren't going to make or break this team. I know they have problems on defense with injuries, but you still would think against the Colts, who are not having a great season, you're playing at home, you still should have enough to win.
Absolutely.
And but maybe it comes right down to that opening kickoff, and that kind of set everything else in motion. I'd like to think you could overcome that when you've got, you still had 59 and a half minutes to play in the game.
Right.
But then it happened again too. So there's got to be issues that are going on. Maybe they just shrug their shoulders and say, well, we're playing guys that we don't want to play on special teams, but we have to because we have all these injured guys, and this is the best that we can do, what we have to work with.
Well, can you imagine what Bob McGinn's article is going to be?
Oh boy, I'll be reading it though.
Yeah.
He lit up, Rodgers, I thought, unfairly, and then his apology yesterday. I don't know if you saw his, not apology in the sense of I'm sorry, but apology as a way of doubling down on his statement and saying that essentially I am the watchdog holding this team accountable for you.
Yeah. Well,
I thought it was kind of self-aggrandizing personally.
I didn't read it, but I think he called them to go win the Super Bowl in 2010. I think when he likes the team,
yes he did. Yeah.
I think he can kind of see through and say this team is good and they're going to go places. And now he's done an about face. He's closer to it than we are. He's obviously not in the coaching rooms, but he is taking this team to task every week. And this is going to be a week where he's been proven right. By the way, the quote for Aaron Rodgers was that the Packers' energy level was, quote, wasn't where it needed to be. So,
okay.
That could mean lots of things, but I suppose it's kind of throwing your teammates under the bus when you say something like that, right? It just isn't something you feel good about hearing about yourself.
Is he throwing himself, though, too, under the bus? I'm not sure. Is he pointing the fingers at others, or is he pointing it at them collectively, including himself?
Yeah, I don't know. It says Aaron Rodgers called out his team for having, quote, uncharacteristically low energy for whatever reason. So,
well, okay, here's something that I noticed, and I don't know if it was just me or maybe you saw it too. What I would say about the energy level, it wasn't so much on offense, but I always notice energy on defense and special teams. We've already talked about special teams. On defense, even if you're not as talented, even if you're lacking, some of your best players like the Packers were, you can still play with that kind of that hair on fire kind of, energy and enthusiasm. And earlier in the season, when they were just shutting everybody down on the run, it just seemed like there were guys flying to the ball. When you watch it on TV or the game that we saw together in person, there just seemed to be guys, playing hard. I mean, for lack of a better, more clinical term, you can just see guys, throwing their bodies around and gang tackling and all that kind of stuff. And the last couple of games, I don't know if it's because as the season wears on, you are a little nicked up, you're a little more tired. They don't seem to be playing with the same kind of intensity on defense that they were earlier in the year. Now, I don't know how much of that is Clay Matthews. I have no idea, because he is the one guy who's always, the motor is always really going, hot and heavy. But these other guys seem to be very kind of workmanlike, not Vince workmanlike, but workmanlike, and they're kind of out there, and seem to be a little bland. I was glad to see Clinton Dix after his interceptions kind of, shaking and shimmying, Granted, it was good it was done on the sidelines, but the guy was showing some life. And there seemed to be a decided lack of life regarding the other defensive players.
Yeah, and that's a little bit of how the coaches are, all the way from Ted Thompson on down. They're very business-like, get things done. I mean, Aaron Rodgers will show the belt, but even Jordy Nelson, Cobb, those guys are not demonstrative when they score. They do the Lambeau leap, and they're pretty happy. They go on the sidelines and smile and laugh a lot. There's not a lot of trash talking or anything, and I don't know if I want a team that does a lot of that, but yeah, showing some motion. I don't know at any point did I feel like this defense was flying around. I thought Jake Ryan had a lot of tackles, and
he had 11 tackles today. Yeah,
you can tell he's playing hard, but you're right. There's not that emotion that you see, and it's a function of winning. If you're up 21-0 and you're sacking the quarterback left or right, then they probably would have been pretty psyched. And this was a team, had we had a lead, I think the Colts would have been ripe for just blitz the heck out of them, and you could have hit Andrew Luck, time after time. But that's confusing and it's hard. This game I thought was going to be fun to watch because I thought it was going to be a high-scoring game, and our offense just looks so pathetic. I like it better. If you're going to lose, let it be like Atlanta, where at least we're moving the ball down the field and there's some good plays. But man, when you're throwing, you have miscommunication, and I saw one where Adams turned it was a deep ball, and Adams turned right, and I think it was a Jordy Nelson throw where he cut off his route and Rodgers threw down the field, right? It's like
you just never used to see that with those two guys.
Yeah.
Those two guys had like a psychic thing where they were always on the same page. And this wasn't the first time this season that's happened with Nelson.
Yeah.
Where they just, he's not doing what, Rodgers thinks he's going to be doing. And that's hard to see. That kind of stuff is hard to see because that was something you always could count on. That's what made that touchdown so exciting, because that's what we're used to seeing. What we aren't used to seeing is Jordy, breaking into the open downfield all alone and Rodgers missing him. I mean, how can that be?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I don't know if he's just not – he thinks he's as fast as he used to be or what it is. But we should take a break.
Yeah,
It's hard to complain for that long period. Need to wind it back a little bit.
We're going to have to refill the shot glass here, I think, is what's going to have to happen. Well, Packers losers today, 31-26, a disappointing game at Lambeau Field. In fact, it's so disappointing that Dave and I are going to take a few minutes, regroup, probably hit some kind of heavy antidepressants, and we'll be back with more Packers therapy in just a bit. Chris and Dave are back with more Packers therapy. Dave is now fully hydrated. I just took a handful of Ambien, so it should be a pretty interesting second half of the podcast. One of the great things about having a podcast that's loved by dozens of people, Dave,
Yeah.
is
Dozens.
that dozens. We have a complete squadron of experts, and we've talked about them. I mean, we have a team chaplain. We have a secret agent. We have a phalanx of lawyers, and we have a team physician. We've talked about Dr. Klaus many times, and this morning he wrote us a lengthy email, and part of it was in response to our discussion at the last podcast about Ty Montgomery and his sickle cell trait. And I think this came from a medical journal. Klaus has access to all of those things, of course, and he even understands some of the things in them, which is actually a real plus for a doctor.
And his patients.
And his patients. I don't know how many Norwegians have sickle cell disease, but if there ever was a problem, Klaus could help them with that. And he did send us some information, which, to be honest, Dave, I became really concerned about Ty Montgomery. I mean, I thought he played a hell of a game today. I like this guy. I think he could be a really good player for them for a long time. But the clip from the medical book that Dr. Klaus sent us was a little bit troubling because one of the things that they talk about, and I'm going to butcher these medical terms, but I know enough to know this isn't good stuff. And what they talk about is that individuals with sickle cell trait are at risk for a few very rare conditions, including rhombolysis, and or sudden death. I know what sudden death is. I don't think that means the next team to score in this instance. But those things are likely to happen with prolonged physical activity, for example, military boot camp, or training for athletic competition. I do believe the National Football League would probably follow under the last one of these things. Anyway, Dr. Klaus goes on to say that he would think that the Packers medical staff is probably more concerned about the rhombolysis. I don't know what that is. RHABDOMYOLYSIS. I don't know what it is. It's probably not good. And the concern is that there could be sudden death during strenuous physical activity. It's not routine, stuff that you or I might do, but there's an increased risk of mortality for individuals possessing sickle cell trait when they are having physiological responses to exercise. Okay, and so I'm watching this guy play today. I'm watching Ty Montgomery play, and every time he's carrying the ball, I'm thinking about, sudden death during prolonged physical conditioning and extreme exercise. And I know we've talked on this podcast, and a lot of people have, about the dangers of concussion. That no laughing matter. The days when I was, playing sports and they laughed about you getting your bell rung, that's not funny anymore. And Ty Montgomery's a young man. He's a smart guy. He went to Stanford. But damn, reading about this, I mean, this is a serious risk. It's not, I got hit, in the back and I'm getting some blood in my urine. I mean, this is the kind of thing that I think the Packers got to be real careful about. I want this guy to play because I love watching him play, but it's a selfish kind of deal because it's for my entertainment and enjoyment. But as a human being, I worry, and I worry whether or not is it really worth it, to play this game, and at what is he, 23, 24 years old, to run the risk of some kind of serious danger. Now, obviously, they have a team of physicians. There's a lot of people looking out for this kind of thing, but I just found it real troubling, and I really couldn't enjoy seeing Ty Montgomery with the ball under his arm, wondering if every time he's getting hit, if he's putting his life at risk.
Yeah, when I read that email from Dr. Klaus, I felt like he should stop playing. This seems really, really dangerous to me. And I thought last week when they described I guess it's not a disease. Dr. Klaus said it's not a disease.
Right. It's a trait that he has from one of his parents.
It's a trait, right.
Yeah.
that it's not football related. It's just something you're born with, and but he can play and he's fine. But it sounded like before the broadcast they talked about he has this trait and it was aggravated by a hit. And then when I read the email about the trait and all that and how you could lead to death as a result of physical activity, I feel like that's why is he playing? But I want him to play, and because one of the things I wanted to talk about was how kind of frustrating it was that he wasn't more a part of the offense. I mean, he carried the ball 7 times. He looks much better as a running back as he goes. But they only threw to him 3 times. He caught all 3, but that kind of out of the backfield plays that was really successful against the Bears, they really got away from. And they can't do it with Cobb because who knows? Cobb was suited up, and then he wasn't in. Then he's in. He coughs the ball up right away. But what was making them somewhat successful by having these guys come out of the backfield and dink and dunk down the field, and how we were saying that was working. It seems like they got to Atlanta, got away from it a little bit, started throwing down the field, did fairly good, and then today they got away from it almost completely. It felt like I would like to see Ty be more the focus of the offense almost, but not if he's going to die. I mean,
exactly, yeah. And by this rhabdomyolysis is the breakdown of muscle tissue that leads to the release of muscle fiber contents into the blood. And when a muscle is damaged, a protein is released into the bloodstream. And I'm looking at this WebMD picture now. The muscle breakdown damages the kidneys. And I wonder if that's why he was experiencing, the blood in his urine.
I'm sure.
And when they're saying, it's a serious syndrome, due to a direct or indirect muscle injury, every time the guy's carrying the ball, his muscles are getting injured because guys are whacking on him. I mean, they're wailing on him, and they're talking about this as being like the death of muscle fibers.
Yeah.
That's concerning. It's the same reason why I do not want to see Sam Shields play again. He's a hell of a player. I've liked him all along. I liked his attitude. I like his goofy, duh you thing that he does when he comes. I like this guy. He's fast. He intercepts. He was a part of that 2010 team. He had a couple of interceptions down the stretch in that season. But look, the guy is going out of games now on small hits. The one that sent him to the concussion the last time was not a significant hit. It's just not worth it to find out 10 years later, that this guy has had a Junior Seau kind of episode, or Dave Duerson or some. I just don't think it's worth it for Ty Montgomery or Sam Shields or these guys to screw up the rest of their lives, because you got to remember that these are fellas under 30 years old. I mean, these are young men with their entire lives ahead of them. And it ruins my enjoyment of the game to think that what they're doing for my entertainment and their financial gain is ruining their lives and potentially killing them. And I just don't like to see it. I don't like to see some of these guys, as they get older, they're in wheelchairs and, dementia, early onset. That's really hard to see. And I'm glad the NFL is taking all this stuff more seriously. I guess I'd like to see them take it more seriously still.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's hard because I want to see my guys play. I want to see them win. They can jar a ball out by hitting the guy as hard as possible, but that might hurt down the line. My immediate reaction is hit him. Knock the ball out. And
exactly.
I don't know these guys. I watch movies and I see guys get shot and thrown off cliffs, and and you cheer for that. I was at a hockey game last night and there was a fight. And everyone stood up and started cheering as they were punching each other. And when they finally, the St. Louis guy threw the other guy to the ice, everyone cheered like, someone made a last-minute shot or something. I mean, I was like, yay! They threw him to the ground. And I thought, how stupid and barbaric that is. But we all do it. I mean, and it doesn't feel real to us because we're not in the middle of it.
Well, yeah, it's like watching NASCAR, and when there's these 8-car pileup and cars pinwheeling down the track. I mean, that's people get. Hey, I'm not immune to it. You look at it and you say, wow, that was because it wasn't me. It wasn't anybody that I know. So yeah, I mean that's kind of the deal here, and it's one thing if it's a concussion, which somehow we become more comfortable with that. It's very common. But I, as a white person, I didn't know that there was such a thing called sickle cell trait that could have these kinds of situations that result from them. I've heard of sickle cell anemia, obviously, and I learned today, by the way, Dave, that I believe the sickle cell trait traces back to Africa because it had a good effect against malaria, and natural selection was such that this developed in the body to protect against malaria. However, it had these other sort of anemic side effects and things that had a significant downside, especially when you're in a place that doesn't have a lot of malaria, like Africa does. Not as big of a problem in the U.S., but genes being what they are, haven't selected out for that at this point. So there are people, like Ty Montgomery who are carrying the trait around, and it does have repercussions. And an illness to me is always it's so much different than an injury that occurs from the result of the game, a collision during the game, a knee injury, something, a pulled hamstring, even a concussion. That somehow seems different than something that is organic in nature.
Yeah.
And especially when it can be fatal. I mean, my God,
Yeah.
As much as I like the guy, and I was glad when Sean Richardson, they didn't let him play. I loved Nick Collins, the Super Bowl game that he had. I mean, the guy had really come on, and he was going to be a force for years to come. But I'm glad that he didn't play. He's got like 4 kids. I don't want to see that dude in a wheelchair. Just do not want to see it. So I'm glad that the Packers play the high side of caution on that. I guess I'd like to see him even play the high side of caution on Ty Montgomery.
Yeah, it doesn't look like they're going to do it. Looks like he's going to play.
Yep,
and,
it does.
There's guys smarter than us in medicine that are making those calls, and so there must be something that's strong enough. And sometimes when I read, that's why I never look up any kind of spot on my arm or something on the internet, because the written description to me sounds terrible. I mean, you're the same way, right? Everything I have is cancer, right?
Oh, man. Absolutely everything. And yeah, I mean, we should have a podcast about that, the anxiety that we have. But it sounds like there's going to be a lot of losing coming up. So maybe we can talk about that after the next couple of losses. And
go to half your
post game. There won't be any post game or postseason podcast. Yeah. So maybe during the postseason we could just talk about our physical fears. Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun for people.
Yeah, I could. My fear of flying. I just after last week I had fantastic. If the Packers depress me too much, we've got a whole host of things to cover.
Do you still take the lorazepam or whatever it is to kind of chill yourself out on those flights?
I don't, and I really should have, because I was watching a movie on the way back, and I didn't hear the pilot talk really about it, and I took my headphones off and heard the word substantial, and I looked around and I said, did he say substantial? What did he mean by that? No one would tell me. And then finally we got closer to St. Louis. He said, we're going to have the stewardess sit down. And, early as we get into St. Louis, he said, in fact, as you put your seatbelts on, why don't you pull them a little tighter? Because we're about to hit some big drops, he said. So, and he was right. I mean, at least he didn't false advertise and scare me for nothing. We went through a rough thunderstorm coming down, and I just hated it. I mean, people around me must have just thought I was a complete lunatic. And maybe that's why I could take this Packer loss a little bit better, because 3 or 4 days ago I thought I was going to die. So
did he fly you under the arch?
We missed the arch by inches.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
okay,
good thing it bends, because if it was straight across, I think we'd hit it. But
that's one of the best things about the stainless steel arch, is that it bends.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's excellent. It's excellent. Yeah.
Hey, we got an email from Chuck P. right after the game. In fact, he's now going by a new gloss, Dave. He's going by iChuck.
Ah, very nice.
Yeah,
very
well,
nice.
It's appropriate for the guy that invented the iPhone, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Hey, you can look it up, as a matter of fact. Anyway, iChuck says, looking forward to hearing some top-notch Dave venting. Seconds after the game ended, which I could only watch in fast-forward mode, I made sure to take down the Packers flag in front of my house before they ruined my property value.
Yeah, I guess I was not nearly as mad because I think somewhere early this season I've kind of resigned that this team is not going to win the Super Bowl, but it might be a still entertaining season, and the journey
Yeah.
might be fun to watch because this discovery of the offense, and maybe all of a sudden they can become this dynamic new offense that they figure out. But after today, I feel like they're not figuring out anything. So
Well,
I don't know
but
if I ranted enough, but
oh yeah,
uh,
you ranted plenty. Don't worry about it. You
okay.
got your full quote again. So yeah, iChuck is going to be with his iWife. They're going to be in Nashville for the game this week coming up, and he wants to have recommendation. Have you been to Nashville recently?
I have been to Nashville. I don't know recently. This in the last 12 months I have.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
he's looking for hotel recommendations. See, I was there 15 years ago. It's been a long time. Great Sheraton downtown, but I have no idea what the status of that is any longer. So Chuck is probably listening. You have any recommendations for him for places to stay in Nashville?
Off the top, we just invested in a hotel, a new hotel. Or actually a hotel is being renovated in Nashville, and I am not going to remember the name of that hotel, but I know we had a conference there too a few years ago that was within walking distance of like the Strip, where all kinds of bars and
Oh yeah,
and
right.
you can walk to the stadium too. And it's downtown. It's all kind of great, and you're going to be
Right.
close to something where there's live music almost
Always,
all
always.
the time,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So
Yep.
you probably can't go wrong with any name brand places. I can't think. I think there is a like a like a country music kind of hotel that's kind of like the the best hotel that you would pick. I wonder if that would be sold out for a Packer game there. I'll see if I can't find what some of those hotels are and send them an email. But that concludes the Nashville portion of our show.
But just make sure you send it on your iPhone.
I will. I will.
Yeah.
Oh, I almost
Yeah.
had to call him because my iPhone went blank a couple weeks ago. Nothing, like completely dead, and I had to go to iTunes and everything to reload stuff. So it came back. It came back. But
Are you still rocking a 6?
yeah, I am.
Oh, Dave, come on, man.
Yeah, I am.
The 7's been out for a couple months now. Come on.
I like my headphones.
Oh, now them's fighting words.
Yeah, I know.
Now,
I'll get there.
Do we have the betting results? Because we usually don't do a podcast so quickly after the game. I imagine Mitno Miller hasn't gotten his act together to send us anything yet. So were you able to go through the betting lines from?
You have insulted Mike severely because he sent me that email. Let me see if I can find it. It was within minutes after the game because I had the results. Are you ready to go through them?
Well, see, that's good because when we had our performance review, I put him on probation.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that he's living up, to his requirements as our intern because we have a line of people who are waiting to do this kind of thing for us.
All right. So let's go through.
Who won? Tell us who won and how the whole thing came out.
We have a tie, and even the tiebreaker is creating ties. So I don't know how. I'm trying to create these tiebreakers so that we have one winner. But this week, Tom Freeman.
Hey!
So Tom is in the casino and hotel, and then you've seen this person before, Con.
Oh yes, he's our friend from Australia.
Yes.
One of our we have a number of Australian listeners, and he is one of them. I'm thinking that's a he, right? Yeah, that is a guy.
I think so. He'll be one of the long list of me butchering their names, so he can send me the correct phonetic or the pronunciation of his name.
Let's just go with Khan. Let's just go with Khan.
Khan, yes, Khan.
Khan.
Both had 6 correct and had their tiebreaker of 55. The answer was the tiebreaker is 57, so they're very, very close. Let me go through the results real quick. The first one we had was total yards by Trevor Davis. You had set the line at what did you set the line at? At 42.
Okay.
Do I know how many yards Trevor Davis had?
I don't think he had any. Well, he had some returns, but
He
I
did.
don't think he had any from scrimmage.
From scrimmage, absolute goose egg 0.
Yeah. Okay.
Number
Well,
2.
So much for that breakout, right?
Yeah. And I had the over. Number 2.
Great.
How many rushing yards would Green Bay have, not including Aaron Rodgers? You set the line at 61. I took the over, and it was 73. It seems like a lot, doesn't it? Is that
No, that is correct. You had 53 from Montgomery,
had 53, right?
16 from Don Jackson,
Yeah.
and then you had 4 from Ripkowski.
All right.
So there you go.
Mike's on
that's
it.
73 yards. Yep.
Mike's on it. Number 3 is Andrew Luck's passer rating. You said 107. I took the under, and it was
good.
74.
74.
Got
Yeah,
that
terrible. Yeah.
An interesting stat that we threw down again last week was number 4. How many receptions would a tight end from our team receive? He set the line at 2.5, and it was 8.
Yeah, Perello and Rogers both with big games. When I saw how they were featuring Rogers, I thought, that line is a little low.
Yeah, I thought it went from 0 to 8 in 1 week.
Yeah.
How many rushing yards would Aaron Rodgers have? You set the line at 32. That was actually a pretty good line. I took the over, and it was correct. It was 43.
Yeah.
6. How many sacks would we have? I think that was a key stat in the game by Green Bay. You set the line at 2.5. I took the over, and actually had I got that one right with Clinton Dix, we might have won this game. But unfortunately, we only had 2 by Green Bay, which is really pretty staggering, understanding how roughed up their offensive line was. But
well, the Packers were not getting home with 4 guys. They had to go 5 and 6 guys to get any pressure.
They weren't getting home then either. Yeah.
And that was a surprise given how the offensive line for the Colts is, not very good.
Yeah. Number 7. This is another one I think I want to keep track of. Is how many catches did Janice, Davis, and Allison have together? You set the line at 8.5. I took the under. They had 1. And that would have been Janice, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, he had a 25-yard reception late in the game.
They went to a formation where they had two running backs, or fullback, running back, tight end, 2 wide receivers. Yeah. And Janice was one of the receivers. Now, they ran the ball, but I thought that was really interesting that they had him as one of the 2 receivers in that play.
Well, I really like, they're putting different packages out there. They're trying to do different kinds of stuff, and they're just not getting a lot done with it. But, at least they're not going static, and that's what everyone wanted to see, and that's what they're doing. The results aren't great, but they're better than what they had been earlier in the season. Let's put it that way.
All right. Let's see. 7.5. I think it's 7.5. Who would be the leading rusher for Green Bay? We need a name on there. You had said James Starks. I had said Don Jackson. The answer was Ty Montgomery with 53.
Ty Montgomery, yeah.
Number 7.75 is, will they run a jet sweep or reverse? You said yes, and I said no.
I thought this was the week. Yeah.
It was a no. I thought Indianapolis was going to run it a few times, and they didn't. And then the total score, you said 62, I said 61. It was 57. We're pretty close there. But Tom Freeman and Khan, let me know how you say your last name. I don't want to butcher it. Are going to be
Khan from Australia. We will call him Khan from Australia.
That sounds good.
Now, does that mean that he has the bottom bunk because he's from down under?
Yeah. Well, we'll leave it there.
Okay, and so, of course, now Tom, we can't mention Tom Freeman without mentioning his blog, West Coast Offensive. So people can check that out. He has entries every week, especially during the season. So check that out. Tom and Con, hope you guys get a chance to have a couple of Vegemite sandwiches and other kinds of delicacies. You have shrimp on the Barbie. Enjoy the hospitality of the Packers Therapy Hotel and Casino, now with locations in Laughlin and Las Vegas, soon to be in Reno as well. Gentlemen, enjoy the presidential suite.
All right, you ready for this week?
Ready to go.
All right, number 1, what do you think Aaron Rodgers' quarterback rating will be this week?
See, the reason I think this is a good question is because it's been so damn volatile.
Yeah.
He's had a couple of games, I think 3 games above 100. But this isn't the consistent Aaron Rodgers that it was always over 100. It was a question, was it going to be in the low hundreds or was it going to be in the mid hundreds? This has been, Aaron Rodgers in the 70s and the 80s, or Aaron Rodgers in the 120s. Today, 94.8. They're going to be playing on the road, Tennessee. The weather, haven't seen a forecast on that at all. But being a road game, Tennessee's a little better, I think, than I expected this season. I tell you what, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to have a bounce back. And I don't think he's going to be super high, but I'm going to set it at 104.
I'm going to take the under. I think I was going to say under no matter what you said. I feel like this is going to be my theme here is this is going to be a game where we really you will start to come to my side of things. I think they're really going to suffer in this game. They're going to be on the road. In a way, it might be good that they be on the road and get away from home, and that change of venue might be helpful. I think what's ailing them right now is going to continue. Now, if Matthews comes back, maybe we'll see.
But if they lose next week, though, boy, that being at 4-5, I can't. I mean, then it becomes impossible to imagine them bouncing back.
And that's what's so bad when you get down in the season so early. You know, if you feel like you're out of it, that's where the conversations of making change happens, because you have a long rest of the season that just grinds on you. I mean, at least last year they were 6-0, and by the time you realize, oh no, it's not getting better, the season's almost over, and now we've got halfway through, and we're already starting to want to fire the coach, or at least one of us does. Number 2, given the somewhat success in getting interceptions, how many interceptions do you think Green Bay will get next week?
Well, they got a couple this week, and Luck is kind of known for that. But before this game, hadn't been a lot of INTs for the Packers. So I'm not confident this is gonna be an upward arc here. There'll be no Sam Shields. I don't think Randall is due to come back, so we're probably gonna go with Rollins again, or as Jim Nantz said, Rollins, which was brilliant.
Yeah.
As my son said, though, well, I've heard it pronounced both ways. Yeah. I'm going to put it at 0.5.
0.5.
1.5. I'm going to set the line at 1.5.
I think they get one. I'm going to take the over. Mariota threw for 2 interceptions today against San Diego, so I'm going to say over on that one.
Oh, all right.
Another one, back to Green Bay. How many rushing attempts do you think they will have, not including Aaron Rodgers?
So same as this past week. So this week is 13 without Aaron. That doesn't sound unreasonable.
Attempts, not yards. Just make sure. Last week was
right. No,
yards.
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
Attempts. Yep.
Okay. But boy, I thought Starks would be back this week, but they were saying that he thought he needed another week. If he's back, I think they're going to give him double-digit carries. So I want to set the line at the non-Rodgers. I'm going to set it at 17.
17 rushing attempts?
Yes.
I'm going to take the under on that one. They had 19 minus 6. Yeah, they had
13 today.
Okay, yeah, 13 today.
I think they're going to run it more. I'm expecting James Starks back, so I'm going to go with 17. Set the number there.
All right, number 4. How many passing yards in total do you think Mariota will throw for?
Marcus. Is it Mariota or Mariota?
Mariota. I think it's Mariota. I'm sorry.
I've heard it pronounced both ways.
Okay. There we go. You did that to me.
Okay. Let's see here. Yards or attempts, did you say?
Yards.
Okay, yards.
Total yards. Passing total yards.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of his. I guess he's worked out to be better than I expected him to. I thought he was more of a college quarterback. Packers, again, if Clay Matthews plays, I think that they can have a better pass rush, have to limit the yardage. Boy, he's got to be back next week. All right, let me set it at I'm going to set it at 236.
Oh, that's low. I'm taking the over.
All right.
Over in that one. Number 5, how many catches and rushes, both combined, will Ty Montgomery have next week? I wonder if they come back to him a bit more. But you're right. James Starks might be back. That might take some carries away. So how many? Today he had 7 carries and 3
receptions. Yeah, 10.
So 10 total. How many next week?
You know what? I think that's a good number because I think it's going to be switched. I think he'll have more receptions and fewer rushes. But I'm gonna put it at let me put it at 10.5.
Ooh, that's all right. I'm gonna take the. You got Cobb. I wonder what this deal is with Cobb, though.
Yeah, but they said it was his hamstring, but I tell you, he looked pretty good moving around on that on that touchdown.
Yeah, I'm going to take the under. I feel like they're going to what they should have done this week is get more of those guys involved. So I think Ty's numbers will be close to 10, but not quite 11 or above. Number 6.
Well, just before we go on to 6,
All right.
that insane pass that Rodgers made. I mean, I know we were kind of negative in the first half of the show, but now that the ambience began to kind of take effect here a little bit, I'm a little more relaxed. That touchdown in the back of the end zone when they showed it from the behind Rodgers view.
Yeah, no, it's great. That happens a lot, right? When you see that behind the view, you realize he's not open.
What was he doing?
Yeah.
What was he doing? Yeah, I mean, why would you throw it there? And it was brilliant, So that's what he looks like when he's not quite himself. I mean, that's just freaking amazing.
I can't figure out if that angle behind the quarterback makes it like that's how hard it really is, or if it makes it look harder than it really is, because you don't have depth perception on TV as much as you would if you were standing in his spot. So maybe you can kind of tell. Like they all look like kind of two-dimensional. If he's in front of the guy, he looks covered, but if there's 5 yards between him and a quarterback, he can see that. You know what I mean? I don't know, but yeah, that view did not look like he was open or that window closed really, really fast. So it's pretty cool.
It is, yeah.
So kick number 6, Tennessee's kickoff return average.
Oh God!
So
I'm not even sure who that returner is.
I'll give you an example. Not including the punts, just kickoffs. So there were 2 kickoffs returns from Mark Mariani or Marioni. I don't know. It's not Mariota.
I was going to say their quarterback is returning kicks. Boy,
no, Mark
just
Mariani. His average was 26.
Oh.
For Indianapolis, Jordan Todman's average was 80.
That guy was incredible today. But see, I don't think it matters as much who's returning the kicks if the Packers special teams is going to play the way they have been. And it wasn't just this game. I mean, they've been leaky for a couple games. So he averaged 20. So is this kickoffs and punts or just one or the other?
Just kickoffs.
Just kickoffs. Oh, man. All right, let's set the line for that. I think they're going to be better. They could get some guys back. I think they're going to be better. So let me put that at 23.
23. All right. I'm going to take the over. I think it's a trend. Number 7, how many total rushing yards will Tennessee have, including their quarterback? This week they rushed for 80 yards. Colts rushed for 85.
Yeah,
so the Packers did a good job.
Luck. Yeah. But there's not Frank Gore. Who's the bell cow for the Titans?
DeMarco Murray.
Oh, now there's a name, but I didn't know that's where he wound up actually, because he's been on the move in recent years.
Yeah.
Good running back. Packers run defense even today, the run defense was solid, but he is a hoss of a man. Including the quarterback, I'm going to put it at 110.
110. Okay, I'm going to take the over.
All right.
On that. Just a negative view on the Packers. 7.5. Sneak one in here. I saw the stat today, which I thought was interesting. They're the only team in the NFL that has scored every time in the first quarter. For all first game, 8 games, they scored in the first quarter. So yes or no, do you think the Packers will score in the first quarter against Tennessee?
In the first possession or the first quarter?
First quarter. Was it the first? Oh, no, I don't know what the stat was. What was the stat? Was it?
I thought what they said was that the Packers had scored 5 times on their first possession. I thought is what they said.
But I saw a stat that said they were the only team to score in the first quarter in
every game. Okay.
So that even if I have that stat wrong, my question is yes or no: will the Packers score in the first quarter?
And you don't mean just touchdown; you mean touchdown or field goal.
Yeah, or safety or whatever. Yeah.
All right. Yes, they will score in the first quarter.
You're gonna say yes. I'll say no. No, I'm gonna say yes. I'll say yes. Mike, I said yes. And then to make this hopefully less of a tiebreaker, what do you think? Tell us what you think Aaron Rodgers' quarterback rating is to the 10th decimal point. So, Chris, you said 104.5. 0.0, I guess, right?
Right, but you want me to fudge that a little bit?
Yeah.
For
Do you want to give me an
purposes?
exact? Yeah.
Yeah, I will go 104.3.
Oh, 4.3. All right. I am going to go with 91.2. That's Chris and Dave. Yeah, I got it. All right. Those are your betting lines for this week.
So, Dave, if people want to participate, if they want to play the lines with us, how do they do it?
They send an email in some form or fashion putting down their answers to Mike Miller at his email address, which is mitnomiller, mitnomiller, @gmail.com, and tell your friends, your family to participate, because Mike has all the time in the world to put this together, and he'll get it to me quickly, because we'll probably do another Sunday night podcast, I'm guessing. I guess we'll need to talk about that. But Mike, great job as always. And those are your betting lines for this week.
Gotta tell you, Mike, how much we appreciate you doing this for us. Saves us a lot of time, and it's one less thing to do. You do a great job. You do it quickly, and I think I speak for everyone that plays the lines consistently. We appreciate that you keep this thing organized and moving for us. So thank you very much, sir. We do appreciate that.
Yep.
All right. Do we want to do a little pop culture? Do you have anything on your mind?
Yeah, I really don't. I've been keeping up with my latest. I did start Narcos, finish the first episode of season 1, and I think that's a keeper. I'm going to start watching that as my regular show. After we talked on Thursday, there's a lot of shows to catch up on. I need some serious downtime to work things out. But I've been just trying to finish my book, my series. Tonight I might watch Westworld or Walking Dead and figure out which one to watch there. But I don't think I have anything really event. Oh, I did see Doctor Strange.
Oh, you did?
I saw Doctor Strange, and I'm a Marvel guy. I think I generally like them all. I like the event when they come together as an Avengers. I did not really like Doctor Strange. I saw it at a noon, 1 o'clock. It was a matinee. I saw it with my son, and this is pretty bad, but halfway through I fell asleep a little bit. And when I woke up, he went from an ordinary doctor to having all these magical powers. So that in between that I missed and fell asleep might have been really crucial, but I just didn't like it, and I'm sort of fatiguing on the Marvel movies. I don't think you watch any of them, so you probably don't appreciate it.
No. I've watched the Netflix shows, the Jessica Jones and the Mike Coulter show, Luke Cage.
Yeah, what's different with those is that's more of a TV series.
Yeah.
More about you have to stretch it into 13 episodes, and so you kind of get into the characters, but they all have their side characters and a companion of some sort they fall in love with, and there's problems, and they're always in danger. So there's sort of a formula there too. But in a 2.5-hour format, it basically is, especially the origin story, is you get a character, he discovers his powers, you have a bad guy who's already powerful, meets the character, they fight, and the good character wins. And that sort of gets kind of regurgitated over and over and over. And I'm finding most of my movies that I'm enjoying is either kind of the independents or documentaries lately, and I don't want to be a movie snob, but I can't really find myself enjoying the big blockbuster movies lately.
Well, that's interesting from you, because you're usually kind of down with that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean Star Wars, I don't think I'll ever get tired of that. But I mean I've watched a few of the summer blockbusters, Ghostbusters, X-Men, and now Doctor Strange, and I just sort of feel kind of emotionless. The effects are great. That just doesn't do much for me lately, but maybe I'm growing up, Chris.
I doubt that, Dave. Did you see one of Klaus's suggestions? I guess this falls into pop culture. It's an iPhone game, which will make Chuck pretty happy. A game called Solitarica is what he's recommending.
He's usually really spot on with the game, so I'm going to have to check it out, but I don't know it.
All right. Well, he's recommending that. I'll have to download it and try it out. But Klaus is recommending that for the iPhone. I'm not sure if it's available on Android, but if you're an iPhone user, Dr. Klaus, the good doctor, is prescribing Solitarica, which does sound like it might be some kind of drug that you would take.
Yeah.
Doctor, is Solitarica right for me? Yeah. Okay. And also, I thought this was amusing, too. In his letter to us, Klaus mentions he's going to be in Florida for vacation in June, and he wanted to know where to go in Florida. And, now perhaps people would like to respond with their favorite suggestions, but for me, if you're going to Florida, you got to go to Kennedy Space Center. That is a must-see for people vacationing in Florida. So, Klaus, that is my recommendation to you. There's a lot of other good places, of course. There's, Disney World and all kinds of great, destination spots. But Kennedy Space Center, must-see in Florida. Check that out. He also doesn't know if Tampa Bay area is on the east or west coast. I think that's what he said. He says the Tampa Bay area or the east coast best. I do like the Tampa Bay area. I don't know what other people feel. You want to give Klaus recommendations? That would be grand as well. What do you like, Dave, in Florida? East Coast or West Coast of Florida?
I think I've always been a Fort Lauderdale. Well, so there's different parts of Florida to me. There's Disney World and Universal Studios, and that, it's other than
that's kind of central Florida.
Yeah, so Orlando. So I enjoy that vacation for what that is. But that, other than being warm, it doesn't really faze me that that's Florida. That's just Disney World and Universal Studios, and that's amazing. At some point, the Star Wars park is going to open up at on Disney World, so I don't know if it will be that summer, but I mean that would be my first choice if I'm going to Florida. I'd never tire of Disney World. Then you've got Miami and down south and the Keys.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
If I was going with buddies, I think I might do more the southern, either like Miami or Fort Lauderdale. I liked Fort Lauderdale a lot. Those are real touristy places, but by the summer you're not going to get spring breakers.
That's right.
But Boca or Fort Lauderdale, sort of that. I think that's all on the west coast. If I
No, those are on the Boca's on the is on the east side.
Oh, I gotta look. Yeah, it's St. Fort Lauderdale is too.
And Fort Lauderdale, right? Yeah, that's north of Miami on the east side. Yep.
All right, so then the east side would be my preference. I think that's where the beaches. That's where I would think if he's gonna come, I would want to go someplace where there's kind of activity. I guess it depends if he's coming with his family too. That would be.
Well, there's 8 people coming, so I'm guessing that's probably it's probably a family affair. I don't think Mr. French will be involved in the family affair, though.
Oh, okay. Well, so I guess I would pick either Orlando or I would spend my time Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. That would be my choice.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do. I don't think Tampa has a whole lot to do there. That I've been there a couple times and it's been more for business, but.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Tampa, if you like the golf area, it's a little bit the water's warmer. If you want to do water kinds of stuff, I think that's a little bit nicer than being on the Atlantic side of things. Tampa area itself, it's kind of a city.
It's a city.
Yeah. I would probably go a little further down the Gulf Coast. You get Sarasota and. You head down to the Naples area and, Fort Myers, that kind of area is a little better, I think. But we can give Klaus some more of that intel. But if others have suggestions, Florida suggestions for a visiting Norwegian gynecologist and also team physician for Packers Therapy, be sure to let us know. You can get us at Packers Therapy at yahoo.com. We will forward your suggestions on to Dr. Klaus and his family and friends who are coming with him in June. It should be toasty.
Yeah.
In Florida. So Norwegians in Florida in June. What could possibly go wrong with that? I just have no idea. All right. Let me see. Have we left any loose ends dangling at all?
I don't know if we got any emails. I get a few. I forward them to you. So if I've missed a few, I apologize. But I read all the emails I get. I just am not do a good job organizing them like you do. But I don't have any loose ends.
Well, Greg X. Was it stand for Xerxes? Is that what we decided the X stood for?
I think so, yeah. That's about right.
Yeah. So anyway, Greg was in touch with us on Twitter. We also have our official secret agent, Pete Colshorn, said he hasn't been able to correspond or listen to our podcast that we gave to the donors, those who supported us, and you can still support us, as a matter of fact, by going to PayPal and make your contribution to Packers Therapy at yahoo.com, as Pete Coleshorn did. But he said he wasn't able to listen to it because he's been away in Haiti. And I'm just wondering if he's there destabilizing a government, perhaps, of some kind. I would have to imagine, because I know he's out doing government work in quotation marks. And then, of course, Dick Davenport. He said it says Richard on his birth certificate, but it feels more like a detective to call himself Dick Davenport. And I have to agree. He does sound like some kind of Dashiell Hammett character. I do like that. So Dick was in touch with us. No, you can't say Dick. Dick Davenport. You got to have both. Was in touch with us also on Twitter. We appreciate people when they correspond with their thoughts, dreams, anxieties, wishes, all that kind of stuff. Packers Therapy at yahoo.com. We appreciate all the listeners, all the support from everyone who's around the world. And by the way, one other thing Dr. Klaus did mention, this is a shout out to our guy John from Scotland, living in northern England, last we heard. He does occasionally, I guess, go down to the games in London, or this most recent time at Twickenham. John, if you're interested in getting together with Guy and Stephen and Klaus when they get together for the annual Packers Therapy reunion down in London, let us know. We will get you together with those guys so you all can rendezvous and recount your favorite experiences listening to Chris and Dave do the podcast over the past 12 seasons. I know that will be a huge favorite. So I think that's about it, Dave. Unless you got anything else, I guess we can probably wrap this one up.
Yeah, the only thing we didn't mention was the squirrel. The squirrel, somehow we got through the whole podcast, and I was just looking at Twitter, and all I can see is the squirrel and everything on my Twitter. And it did make me think, in St. Louis, we had the rally squirrel when we won the World Series. Our squirrel got loose at Busch Stadium. And I thought, if they score a touchdown, the play after that squirrel ran around the end zone, I thought that could be the rallying cry. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And I think the play happened. It was just an incomplete pass. So not even a squirrel can do it.
Dave, how can a squirrel get into Lambeau Field? Really? I mean, you've been there many times. I've been there many times. Maybe our listeners, especially those around the world, never have been there. But, this isn't some kind of dilapidated, clapboard kind of facility. I mean, this is a building, and it's a nice one, and it's a new one. And, like, squirrels don't get into my house. So a squirrel really gets in and is running around the field during the game? I mean, it's one thing if there's a bird, because obviously they can fly in, right?
I know. I can answer that question. Yeah.
Unless this was Rocky, the flying squirrel. I thought that was kind of weird that somehow a squirrel was, running around during the game. And then, of course, the guy with the big, long, net trying to corral this squirrel, which was kind of comical.
Yeah,
too.
I'm sure it was probably the best thing that people saw. Well, one thing I thought, too, is it's not like its natural habitat is right up against the stadium. It's all concrete pavement for,
miles around, pretty much.
Miles around, yeah. Except the fact that the squirrel, there'd be food all over that parking lot, right?
Well, that's true. That's
so you
true.
get a squirrel coming up close for the food and then gets confused. And, mice can get into my house, I suppose. So there's ways they can get in. I mean, you think someone brought it in?
Boy, I sure hope not. Because, no, in
It'd be hard to
Tennessee
get
next
through
week.
security, right?
In Tennessee next week, because people will probably be wearing, hats made of squirrels, so it wouldn't surprise me at all, people in Tennessee. But I would think not at Lambeau. It just was a weird deal. I kept wondering how can this be happening, especially with 80,000 people. I mean, they don't usually gravitate toward people; they run away, and then to be on the field.
Yeah, in the end zone. Yeah, he made it to the end zone. That's pretty amazing. Yeah, it's really a feel-good story that has been buried in our misery here.
Well, there was plenty of misery to talk about.
Speaking of misery, one other thing we should just cover. By the time we have our next podcast, we will have a new president of the United States.
That is correct, yes.
We should probably take this moment to apologize to everyone who's not living in the United States for the candidates that we put up this year. Although
it's not good.
Yeah, I don't know. I obviously don't want to talk about who you're going to vote for. But we will have a new president come Tuesday. Well, I
Well,
hope.
if a president-elect will have.
Yeah, that's right. So that'll also be something that will be major in the United States. We'll be all watching. I'll be just glad when this whole thing is over. I don't know what it's like in other countries. It's because it's not just the president; it's all this other stuff. There's just commercial after commercial with this stuff. I'll be so happy when this is done.
Well, I think a lot of voters feel the same way, and it's two, I think, polarizing candidates. I think a lot of people are not voting for someone; they're voting against the other, because this is in the way our American system works. You pretty much have A or B. There's not really a lot of other serious parties. It's either the Democrats or the Republicans who kind of roughly align with liberals and conservatives. And we're going to wind up with one or the other. In the latest polls that I've seen, kind of give a nod toward the Democratic candidate, but not by a lot. And it's within the sampling error, so we really won't know how that's going to come out. And of course, in your line of work, the impact it might have on the financial markets could be very interesting to see how all that plays out too.
Yep.
So a lot of people here looking forward to it, and as a matter of interest. But I think also there's a lot of breath being held in the United States about this, because you really don't know what's going to happen with either one of these two. Once they get elected. I mean, it's kind of unprecedented. Even in the past, people maybe had their candidates, but you knew that there wasn't going to be anything happening in the long run that was going to be totally unpredictable and scary and, that kind of stuff. The way this is working out, you could wind up with something like that. And the United States is not used to that sort of thing. So Tuesday is going to be a big day in the U.S. I've actually already voted. You could you can vote early and absentee. So I've already taken care of that. Have you done that yet, Dave?
I have my absentee ballot because I'm hitting the road tomorrow, but I have not turned it in yet. So I think I can turn it. I think I can have my wife turn it in when she goes and votes. But so yes and no. I voted on my absentee, but I haven't turned it in yet.
Well, that's the thing to do. A lot of people, I think, are sitting this out too because they don't like the candidates.
A lot of people. That's right. They are, and I know. I'm the same way. It's been so difficult to choose that I almost, for the first time in my life, really don't want to vote. But I'm voting for the one I dislike the least.
Dislike the least. And
right.
I think that's very common this time, probably more than in my lifetime.
Yeah.
To have people, voting not affirmatively, but voting just because they don't like the other candidates so much. So it will be interesting to see. So the next time that we do our podcast a week from now, there will be change in the air. I don't think it'll be change in the air at 1265 Lombardi. We talked about that, but there will be political change. So we will have to wait and see how that comes out, just like we'll wait and see how the Packers come out when they play in Tennessee next week. And so I guess I'll be watching the game. I imagine you will too, Dave.
I will too. I almost thought about going, but no, it's not that far away from St. Louis to drive to Nashville. But I think given the outcome of this game, I will not try any harder. So,
well, perhaps we will be pleasantly surprised like we were unpleasantly disappointed this time around. So we'll be watching the game. We will have our views, thoughts, and opinions for you after that game is complete. And until that time, I'm Chris.
And I'm Dave.
And that's Packers Therapy.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Dave.
And that's Packers Therapy.